Come on in to Margaret McSweeney's Kitchen for Kitchen Chat, where every week you'll meet chefs, cookbook authors, foodies, gourmets, and just plain people who love to eat. And along with laughter, chat, recipes, and stories about food, you'll sometimes also hear words of inspiration, love, and hope. As Margaret always says, Kitchen Chat is food for the senses and food for the soul. So grab a cup of coffee, put your feet up on a comfy chair, and get ready to spend a little time with Margaret and her friends.
Hello, dear foodie friends, and welcome to Kitchen Chat. I'm your host, Margaret McSweeney, and I'm so glad you're joining me today in the beautiful Viking and La Cornue showroom in New York City, here with my dear friend, co-host, and brand ambassador, and chef extraordinaire.
I am here, but you know who's really here today?
Yes, is Sara Moulton. This is such an honor.
Oh,
it's so
thank
great
you.
to see you.
Yeah, same here.
And I am so excited to hear, first of all, about how you two
totally.
met. And
we have a history.
About this. I cannot wait to hear the scoop.
I always have some kind of a crazy story when it's attached. Somehow, some way, every guest we have on Kitchen Chat, I know for, well, it's the chef world. Right?
It's a small world.
It's a small
world, yeah.
For sure.
And I can't wait to talk about your 8th season. Yes, of Sara Moulton's weeknight meals.
That's right.
You have really helped change the way home chefs prepare. You've given such confidence to home chefs throughout your culinary career, and I am so grateful for that. And I'm so excited to get even more information about your show. But can we start off with how you two met?
Yeah. So I was lucky enough to be on Cooking Live,
which was my Food Network show back, it's 96 to 2002.
Right, so I was
live call-in show.
So I was live, barely alive, on her show. And I basically was extremely ill with the worst food poisoning I have ever experienced in my life.
You didn't tell me?
I was so excited to be on the show. The world could have been ending. I was like, I am doing this. And it was a little too late for any cancellations or anything like that.
No, that would have been that. It was live.
Yeah.
Then I would have had to, I don't know, talk about peanut butter. I would have had to make something up.
But you would have made it work. You know what I mean?
I would have. Believe me, I was in that situation. No, but you're right. That was the early days of food TV.
Sure.
So a lot of people, even people now who are like really accomplished on TV, had never been on TV.
Right. Yeah.
So I sort of had to help them.
And you
relax.
you were actually in the midst of that. I don't want to call it. It was a storm of sorts. You made me feel really comfortable, and it was probably one of the worst and best TV experiences I've ever had. Aww. But it was rough.
Well, you must have been really good if I had no idea, or I'm just really stupid.
One or the other.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe it's a combination of the two.
Maybe the both.
God, we're so alike.
I was so happy to have a warm body because you were
I was warm.
scheduled.
I was warm.
Really
I was
warm.
very warm. I was beyond warm.
Yeah.
But it was still in all, it was a great experience. And you've had I've watched so many of your shows, and
well, I did 1,500 for the Food Network.
Oh, wow.
Because I did that live
show,
I racked them up because it was every night, an hour-long show, and then so that's how I got so many, and I had about 500 guests.
So that was my culinary disaster moment. Have you ever had one?
Yes.
What is it? Tell
I
us.
overcooked 3 racks of lamb for James Beard at a restaurant I worked at the night that I was the chef de cuisine, and he came in for dinner. He was friends of the owner, Sally Dar, La Tulipe on 13th Street. He lived on 12th Street. She used to be able to look out the window and see him showering naked. Not that she wanted to.
What a treat.
Yeah, but he used to.
Right.
He's a jolly fellow. He's a jolly fellow. He'd do it outside. But anyway, he'd also come in for dinner frequently, and on Sunday nights, I was the chef tournant at this restaurant. So I did everybody's job, so they got a second day off. And on Sundays, I was the chef de cuisine. So he came in and ordered a rack of lamb, and I was such a nervous wreck. I threw on 3 different ones at 3 different times, and somehow I managed to overcook all 3 of them. Oh. So when it was time, the third one, I finally put it out. Sally said, because she was a perfectionist, no, we will not put that out. We will send him a free order of shrimp and sesame sauce, and you'll do another one. And I did, but I was mortified.
That's
as you
rough.
can imagine.
That's rough. That's a little bit
Everybody
pressure.
has a bad story.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure. Do you have a bad story?
Margaret, come on, give us one.
Oh, goodness. I did not know that bourbon is flammable, and when I made the bourbon pecan pie on Thanksgiving a couple years ago.
But you were alone in your own kitchen.
Well, no. Everyone was there, and it just kind of smoke billowed out, the fire to fire, you know, anyway, it's okay.
Oh, fun times.
But it's fun. That's what makes some memories. But I love that you touch upon James Beard. And I mean, this is such an honor. I'm just getting goosebumps. And that you have really worked with and been trained by some of the giants of the culinary world. Julia Child, James Beard,
Jacques Pepin. He was also, he would come into La Tulipe and do this guest chefing thing, and I'd follow him around like a little puppy dog, and he would, you know, train me. He was great. And then, you know, would invite me to do things. And again, he's fantastic. I'm sure you know him.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody knows Jacques.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, everybody knows Jacques. Yeah.
You've
been on
interviewed.
Kitchen
Yeah, you've
Chat
been on
3
Kitchen
times.
Chat. Yeah, 3 times.
But I'd love to do a video kitchen. I'd love for him to come into the Viking kitchen.
Yeah, and wow us all, you
Yeah,
know.
for sure.
He can cut up a chicken in 29 seconds.
That's amazing.
A whole chicken. You know, I thought I was pretty good at 2 or 3 minutes. He's 29 seconds.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what was your greatest lesson and most fun memory of each of these icons, you know?
Oh, I don't know. Julia was just so much fun. You know, we would be in the middle of cooking a dinner party at her house, and of course that was a little stressful for me because she was 6'2", and so all the counters were like up here, and so was all the equipment. But we would be in the middle, a bunch of us making a dinner party, and she'd turn to us and say, "Aren't we having so much fun?" I mean, she just was.
You do a good Julia.
I do. I don't think she'd appreciate it, though. I don't know.
You know what? I appreciate it.
Well, thank you. But that was wonderful. I mean, we could go on for life about all the things I learned from her. But one of the nicest things about her, I have to say, besides the fact that she was a great home cook and a great teacher and really one of the funniest people I ever met, because she was so refreshingly honest. But she was so interested in people that when she'd have book signings, it would go on for life, because every single person who'd go up to get their book signed, she'd want to know all about them.
Right.
You know, so hours later, the person at the end would finally get their turn, but she'd still ask them about them. So she was fantastic. Jacques, I mean, so much about technique and also just about being professional. That he's just amazing, and also just he's so sharing. You know, he's written 1 million blurbs for 1 million cookbooks, and he's encouraged 1 million young people, both men and women. And also, I find him I'm not saying he doesn't like the ladies, of course he does, never did anything inappropriate at all. But
well, that's refreshing.
Yes.
No, well, not that I'm aware of, and I've not heard it from anybody else. We only have nice things to say about him. But I have to say, as a French male chef of his age, because I think at this point he's 83, 84, he was always supportive of women in the kitchen, perhaps because his mother was a chef. But that is so rare, and that's why it was so hard for me to get a job here in New York City when I first moved here, because it was lockdown. I mean, I'd already worked as a chef in Boston. It was lockdown. You know, women were not allowed to work in them because they were all under the direction of French European male chefs, and they didn't want women in their kitchens.
Wow.
Ew. You know, wire coat hangers, no.
We've come a long way.
We have.
Yeah,
It's
for sure.
better, it's not best.
Bump in the road.
Yeah.
I know. And I know the whole Me Too, and do you feel it's really impacted the culinary?
Well, I think it's impacted everything that women do, and I think part of the problems we all brought up, myself included, and even though I consider myself a feminist, and my mother certainly was, we were all brought up to sort of be nice. And so I think at every level, you know, there's really horrible things that have happened, including, you know, of the sexual nature, and also keeping women out of the top jobs or the higher paying jobs. But there's also been the minor stuff where women just sort of took a back seat to men, myself included. And I think that the good news about this is it's empowered women to just say, you know, I'm not going to let you get that job when I could have, or I'm not going to defer to you on this subject. I think it's given women more confidence, and I think that's great.
So your culinary career, did it begin with ABC? Is that with Good Morning America, or could you take us back? You know,
My TV career.
I'm going to dial it back a little bit further,
Yes.
because this is a question that I have in my head. Did you want to have a TV life?
Never. Never.
I'm not feeling that was...
Yeah, never.
Never.
I thought that was tacky.
Okay.
I thought people who were on TV needed attention.
It's still the truth. It's true.
Well, except then here's my icon, who I always loved, even before I worked for, Julia Child.
Yes.
There she is on TV. How, what did I think she was doing there?
Right.
But no, I never did. So what happened was, I went to the CIA, Culinary Institute of America, worked in restaurants.
So did I.
Yes. What year? Oh, God.
No.
Way after me.
Well, it's fine. We both went.
We both went.
We've been together.
Good school.
Yep.
Good
Great.
school.
Fantastic.
At any rate, worked in restaurants for 7 years.
Right.
And then in that period, I ended up meeting Julia when I was in Cambridge and ended up working for her on Julia Child and More Company, her PBS show, and the cookbook that went with it. And she became a lifelong mentor, et cetera, et cetera. So when I moved to New York in 81, I'd been in Boston working in restaurants. She started working at GMA, and I wanted to have dinner with her. I missed her. And she said, "Oh, dear, you have too much prep. I don't think I can get done," because she'd come down and prep like 6 or 7 segments.
Wow.
And I said, "I'll tell you what, let me come in and work for free, and then you know, maybe you can get out for dinner." So she did. We went out for dinner, and the next day GMA hired me to start working with her, which I did only briefly because I think I'd started at La Tulipe, and Sally didn't want me to have a second job. But I went back, so that was in 83 or 82. In 87, I went back and did the job full time, doing all the prep for all the chefs from 87 to 96. And so that was behind the scenes, and that was really the early days of TV.
Sure.
Everybody was scared, you know. I
Right.
mean, it was, deer in the headlights. So I would do whatever it took, slip them some whiskey or a glass of wine or, tell them stories or whatever to get them to. So I met everybody in that period. I still had the job at Gourmet.
Yes,
I always had more
yes.
than one job. But that's how I started in TV. It was behind the scenes at GMA. And then when the Food Network started, it was because I ran the kitchen at GMA. My title was executive chef, which was very grand. I mean, I was there like once every 2 weeks or something, maybe once a week. That's why the Food Network approached me and asked me to run the kitchen at the Food Network. And so this is 92. They started in 93. And I said, that's not a salary job with benefits, is it? And they're like, no. And I was like, well, I can't do it, because I had my gourmet job with benefits. By now I had kids, which is why I left the restaurant industry. And I also didn't think the Food Network was going to last.
You nailed it.
I know.
did.
I know, right? Woo! So at any rate, then they asked me if I wanted to be a food editor, and that was a desk job, and I was a chef. I was now chef at the Dining Room Gourmet, so I didn't want that. And then they asked if I wanted to do some on-air stuff. And GMA just put me on as the secret weapon with Joan and Charlie. And I thought I did pretty well. Of course, as you know, here I am looking at the two of you. I don't ever have to look in the camera. It's one thing to be on with hosts. It's another thing to be on alone. Oh my God, that is so scary. So I went and did a 15-minute pilot, and I absolutely sucked. So I walked out of there, and I thought, well, okay, it's over. I didn't want to do this anyway. People on TV need too much attention. So I went back to my job. But the Food Network in the early days was desperate. They were all news people. They didn't know who the players were in the food industry. They didn't have the money to fly anybody in.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
Amazing.
So.
And they made culinary stars out of that team that they brought
Yes.
in.
Right, and then the whole thing changed. But they invited me back to do something called Chef du Jour.
Oh.
I did 5 half-an-hour shows, and for this, I got media training.
Right.
And the media training helped a lot, but I was still pretty awful. But compared to the other Chef du Jour chefs, I guess I was pretty good. So they asked me to come back and fill in for somebody who had a show, Michelle Ervater, an early trailblazer, because they didn't have very many women in the beginning. And I fill in for her on her show because when she went on book tour, they would have a substitute. If any of the men went on book tour, they would just put their show on hiatus.
Oh.
Yeah, no, it was really bad in the beginning at the Food Network, and then it changed, of course,
Yes.
the women took over. But so they asked me to do that, and then after that, they asked me to do, because part of her show was a call-in, so she'd set it up so that somebody would call in. It wasn't live, but it was a real human with a real question. And I did that in one of the segments I did too. And because of that, they offered me this live call-in show. I was
And
like,
this is the one you were on. the
yes.
live call.
And it was really live. Talk about reality
Wow.
TV. It was complete with dirty phone calls. I got 6 in 6 years. And, I dropped it. I burned it. I didn't finish it. It was... It was wild. You probably don't even remember because you were so sick. You were just trying to maintain.
I was just trying to keep it together.
Keep your head up. Performing when you don't feel well. That's
sure.
terrible.
And I had not ever had any, at that time, it was one of the first things I think I've ever done on TV. It was one of the first moments on food TV, and I was like, I need to do this.
Yeah, and you're right. Yes. So many people were discovered on my show.
Yeah.
And tell me who?
Michael Simon, Gail Gant had a show for a while, Michael LaMonaco, Ming Tsai. Ming Tsai was going to be discovered no matter what. He's that kind of personality. But anybody who's anybody was on my show because they were looking for new talent. Yes. So I did, as I said, 1,500 shows. I probably had about 500 guests. Only 1,200 of them were the live call-in because then I morphed into taped shows. And I loved having guests because I learned from them.
Right.
You know, it was really fun. You know, it's like, and I'd think about, what do I want to know about today? Asian noodles. Okay, I'm going to have Corinne Trang on tonight.
I mean, that's the greatest recipe right there, where you let somebody else do what they're good at.
Yeah.
And you just...
I learn, and my audience learned. It was fantastic.
That's the best kind. I love that. I love that recipe.
Right.
Now you're entering your 8th season.
On my public television show, because finally the Food Network was done with me. And so I like Julia, I liked being on TV. Back to how tacky is that? So
I need attention.
I know, it wasn't about attention. Now I love teaching. I love that. The thing where people, you know, you felt like you got people cooking.
Right.
And so we started Sarah's Weeknight Meals in 2008. Now, we all remember what happened in 2009.
Yes,
the bottom fell out of, the financial world. So we couldn't find an advertiser for Gourmet, let alone an advertiser for my show. So both my show disappeared, and then shortly thereafter Gourmet, until we could, and obviously I've survived the demise of Gourmet. I went out and did freelance work, but it took us a couple of years to find sponsors, so we had a hiatus between the first season. But ever since then, we've done it just about every year, and we're now planning season 9. Season 8 is still rolling out. And I just love it. I own it with my partner.
That's great.
And she and I have so much fun. And sometimes, with public television, you get this much money. So we just make it work. Sometimes it's back to the old days. We're doing the prep. We're doing the dishes. We're figuring out what we make it up as we go along. But we have so much fun.
That's what it's all about.
What are some of the highlights? Because you've taken it on the road a little bit.
We have now taken it on the road.
Yes.
So back to what we were saying before about how I love cooking with guests. I've had guests on my set. We pretend that, full disclosure, my set is my producer partner's house in Connecticut because it's much prettier than, I have a nice loft, but it's boring, it's loft in New York City with, other apartments out the window. So we go to her place and pretend it's my house, my dog, my garden. And sometimes I forget and say, I'm going to try this at home. And I'm like, wait, you can't do that. But at any rate, I did have guests, but then we thought, we want to, some of our sponsors take us in the field, which has been fun. We're working with a cruise line right now. So last year, for season 8, we taped in Spain and Italy. And so we made paella in Valencia. It was actually a French chef, not a Spanish chef, although he speaks perfect Spanish. And he competes in paella competitions. So you'll appreciate this, both of you. He had this little secret, among others, that he picked up from a housewife at one of the paella competitions. So he's cooking in one of those big paella flat pans.
Love.
He takes sea salt and he sprinkles it around the edge pretty early on in the process to caramelize it. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
And then he gradually, as it browns, brings it into the rest of the ingredients. That was, to me, hands down, the most exciting thing. So anyway, we got to do that. We got to do tapas north of Barcelona in this medieval town called Madremanya. We got to go to a Tuscan villa with this wonderful, soulful woman.
Living the dream.
Yes.
Living the dream.
Yeah. So, and then we went to Sorrento and did a piece in a lemon agriturismo farm with this whole family. And they were the mother didn't speak English, but she was about my size. And we communicated anyway. We made pasta.
Lots of hand motions.
Lots of hand. Yeah, that's the Italians,
exactly.
right? So it's just really been fun, and looks like for the next season we're going to be going to Latin America, and I'm looking forward to that. Plus, which we've gotten to different places in the United States. So with one of our sponsors. We've been to Louisiana. We cooked with some Cajuns. We went and did sushi rice in California with this gorgeous young man who does rice farming TV, his own podcast. He's adorable. He looks like my son, only he's much taller and with more hair. Young guy, really cute, and so it's fun. So we're out. So the idea of taking this show on the road, although paella is hardly a weeknight meal, it's a special occasion.
I love paella. It's one of my favorites.
Yeah, isn't it?
I have not had paella.
Oh,
it's delicious.
I'm going to have to have paella.
Yeah, I mean, and there's wonderful restaurants that do it too.
Yeah, and I'll tune into your show.
Oh yes,
again,
and you'll learn all
to
these
learn
tricks,
everything,
all these tricks. But what's fun going on the road is seeing what somebody else's weeknight meal is.
Right.
And tapping into that. And sometimes it's hard with chefs to get them to stop doing all those fancy things with all those ingredients.
I agree.
But absolutely. But we say no. This has got to be what you really would cook at home. Not that all your little sous chefs and line cooks prepped for you to bring here to me.
Right.
So I'm learning, and we have home cooks. One last thing I'll say. So we did a call to action. We're going to do it again, where we ask for somebody to. It has to be in the tri-state areas because again we have a budget this big. To reach out to me, and if they have a family recipe, any ethnic variety, preferably the more ethnic the better. Something that I don't cook.
Right.
Bring it to me. So we found a woman from Puerto Rico who'd grown up in Puerto Rico who was a CIA agent.
Yeah.
I mean, a real CIA. Not our CIA.
Not
so that was fun. We were the double CIA girls. She also happened to be short. Not that I prejudiced against tall people. I love them, but it's fun when somebody's my size. And she made gandules, arroz con gandules, and then tostones, which are the fried plantains, and they were fantastic.
Wow.
And she and I had so much fun. And she was a regular home cook. She'd never been on TV before. But we had so much fun.
I love that. I love it. And that's part of what we're doing here in the Viking showroom is we're bringing in, for example, when we were building the showroom, so I design and build these things, there was a guy who used to bring the cutest little lunch packs, and he would have everything from empanadas, you name it. And every day I would watch him eat, and he would take the time and sit there and enjoy himself. Come to find out, I mean, everything looked so beautiful. It was his sister that was cooking for him. So I actually brought the sister into the showroom to make empanadas. Real people cooking real food.
Exactly. Exactly.
That's where the simplest, most wholesome energy comes from, people that are passionate about making what they're used to making for their family. And they were delicious.
I bet. Oh, God, you're making me hungry.
I know, my mouth just
Although I have to say the funniest thing about after we did the show, so I checked the comments on the website. I do the website half of it. I got, of course, a comment from somebody from Puerto Rico saying, that is not how you do gandules.
No.
You always get, the Italians in particular can't agree on anything.
No.
Right.
My sister is actually here in the showroom today. And we both make meatballs, Italian meatballs, completely different. And of course, hers are better than mine, and mine are better than hers.
I have a very important question on that subject. Do you brown them before you put them in the sauce?
Yes.
Does she?
Yes.
Because that was a big controversy when I had different Italians on.
Yeah. No, everyone makes them differently, but they're all the best.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, of course they are.
Yeah.
So now I loved taking you back to the question of when you first started never thinking you were going to be on TV to where you are today with all of these episodes behind you. Is it, when you're behind the camera now, do you even think about it? No. Right?
No, I
Remember
don't.
how intimidating it was when you
Oh,
first...
my God, it was awful. But as soon as I decided I was a teacher, I had a message, so it wasn't a problem.
And there it is. That's
Yeah.
a great way to describe, like when you're teaching someone, it's no longer that you're
It's not about me.
Exactly.
It's about you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Really
You're
great.
continuing the legacy of Julia Child.
Absolutely. I mean, I learned a lot from her, and it's okay to make a mistake. You must smile constantly and for no particular reason. I probably told you that. I told every single guest I had on my show.
I believe you probably
Boys
did.
and girls,
I
not
remember.
just women, that you never stop learning, that it's all about excellence, that you must be curious, I learned so much from her. So yes, I hope I am.
If there's ever a chance I can be back on any of your shows without being sick, that would be wonderful.
That would,
Oh,
a retake.
well, if we make it to season 9,
Yeah.
you're in the tri-state area.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Maybe we could even get a Viking stove in there.
Okay,
Oh, that
all
would be
right.
fabulous.
Speaking of Viking, you're familiar with our brand?
Well, here's the thing. So when I worked at the Food Network, and of course, very aware of Viking, and then Julia was a big fan of Viking.
Right.
And back when there were very viable Viking cooking schools, I think I taught at a few.
Oh, wow.
Now I know that's franchised. Viking doesn't run them anymore, although that may change.
The whole thing, Viking is actually, there's a big corporation called Middleby that purchased Viking, so Viking has been, and continue, is being rebuilt. from the ground.
Rejuvenated.
Yeah, for
Yes,
sure.
no, I get that.
There's a
Because
whole new energy.
we worked with Viking a ton when I was at Gourmet. I was on the advertising side.
Oh, okay.
So we'd do events with them. We would do advertorials. I might develop recipes.
Wow.
I did cooking classes. So yeah, I'm very familiar. And then I was also familiar with what happened to Viking
Right.
when it sort of disappeared for a while there. So I'm so glad.
Yeah, no, it's back with a
That's
whole
back.
new.
Yeah,
a whole
this
new
is
energy.
wonderful. Yeah.
And you're still here to make it even greater. But
Yes.
I have so many questions to ask you about TV. I love TV personalities, especially when it comes to cooking. Do you have any advice for somebody that's trying to break into food TV?
Oh gosh, it's so funny, Jamie, because in the old days, I thought, well, you needed good culinary training.
Right.
And then there was quite a while where, no, that was not what the Food Network anyway was looking for. All they were looking for was big personalities with cleavage. If you were a girl. I had it. They didn't want to see mine, so I was too old, I guess. My cleavage was too old.
I never had it.
Yeah. Or you had to be, all the competition shows.
Right.
I don't really have any advice these days. I don't know why they pick. I would say one thing is constant, starting with Julia Child and up into the biggest star today, is you need a big personality.
Yeah, for sure.
You need a really a point of view. And, I mean, one thing that's interesting is Salman Nasrat, who did Salt, Acid.
Yes, in fact.
And she's not a glamour puss, and yet she's, no criticism, she's perfectly lovely.
Yeah.
But she's not, a gorgeous young lady.
Right.
And she's really resonating with the public. Yes. And, it's funny because I think about Julia and how the Food Network wouldn't hire her, touch her with a 10-foot pole for most of the years I was there. I mean, they did her reruns, but then, I wanted to do the year that my last year with the Food Network, which was 2005, I wanted to do a special on Julia, and they said, oh, nobody knows about her anymore.
Oh, who's she?
No.
But I insisted, and we did, and I had to fight all the way. Like, I wanted to interview Jacques. They were like, oh, nobody knows who he is anymore. I mean, it was just really awful. But any rate, back to big personalities. They went from teaching, the Food Network was like teaching, and then it was like no entertainment. Well, who did both better than Julia?
Right.
She was such a ham and over the top. So I say big personality, whatever that personality is. Of course, I'd like it if the person, like somebody like Salman Nasrat, actually had a message and is actually teaching you something. That to me means more than just being a big personality and having fun.
It's not about, it's like personalities. I look at flavors. Like if you have a strong flavor, sometimes it's too strong.
Yeah.
So you should back it up with something, a message.
Some depth. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I like that I got to know you better today. You're spicy. You're a little saucy. I didn't know that about you.
You don't even know what I didn't say.
What didn't you say?
Well, no, I'm not going to tell you.
Come on, tell
Not
me.
on camera.
We're going to have you back many more times.
Well, thank you.
Thank you so much for being on Kitchen Chat. And I always like to end the show with 3 tips for the home chef.
Oh,
so
dear.
we are asking the right
On the spot.
person here.
Oh, dear, 3 tips.
The top 3 tips, or just any 3 tips for the home chef.
Number 1, you want to learn how to cook? Just cook. You can teach yourself so much.
That's really great.
Number 2, the first most important ingredient in the kitchen is salt.
Okay.
Don't stay away from it. Season as you go. Taste as you go. I mean, unless it's raw chicken, obviously. Don't do that. But salt changes everything. Okay, and number 3, this is a Julia-ism. If you're going to entertain or even if you're cooking for your family, never apologize, never explain. It's the best you meant it. It's the best. It's the way it's supposed to be. Don't tell people all the things you did wrong because they're so glad you cooked and they didn't.
Yeah, exactly. I love that.
Why ruin their meal?
Exactly.
I learned that from Julia.
That's amazing.
I have
That's
it up
a
on
great
my
tip.
refrigerator.
Say that again. Say that again.
Never apologize, never explain. Your souffle fell, don't say it fell, say it's pudding cake.
Got it.
Yeah.
And what would I say about my flambé?
You flambéed it! Or it was blackened. It was a new version of a pecan pie.
Caramelized.
Yeah, caramelized. There's all sorts of good words. One of my favorites is rustic.
Rustic.
Yeah. It looks like, woo!
Flavor.
You just call it rustic. Yeah.
That is hysterical.
This is great. You have helped me reframe my catastrophes in the kitchen.
Oh, I doubt you have many.
Oh, God.
Oh.
No, I'm okay.
Okay, don't say a thing.
Don't-
Don't say a thing. Okay,
I'm
good.
quiet.
Okay.
Oh, well, thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for sharing your joy in the kitchen. And
Thank
you
you.
exude such joy, as my dad did. And I love seeing
Oh, can we say
this.
one more thing?
Absolutely.
I just want to mention that I've been doing, and it's been really, really fun. It's like a resuscitation of cooking live.
Yes.
I've been doing radio with Chris Kimball on Milk Street. And our part of it's an hour. I mean, Chris is the host, and I co-host a segment with him where we answer callers' questions. And it is so much fun. Because, as we all know, Chris Kimball is sort of a nerd, and he knows everything. I mean, he does in a lot of ways. And so he'll be, serious, and I'll be more like the shrink, So somebody will call in and say, they love this, they've been making this cake mix for years, and they add all these terrible ingredients, and it's really yummy, and what would be a better way to make it? And Chris will take them through the whole way to do it by hand,
Yes.
And I'll say, but wait a second, do you love this recipe? And they'll say, yeah. And I'll say, does it remind you of your mother? You'll appreciate that because of your father. And they'll say yes. And then I'll say, don't change a thing.
Make it.
So anyway, I love doing that. It airs weekly on NPR. It's called Milk Street Radio. And my part of it is about 20 minutes with Chris.
Perfect.
And we have a lot of fun, me and Chris. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, thank you so much.
Okay, I'm sorry. I had
don't
to plug
apologize.
that.
That's a great plug.
Okay.
And I'll make sure we have all these links for your PBS
And we have to
show.
add in
Yes.
this. We have to add a photo or snippet of me on that show, sweating to
yeah.
death.
I want to see it.
Oh,
Can
we
you
have
find
to
it?
find
I'm
it.
dying to see it.
That's the worst.
And figure out why I was so stupid.
No, you weren't.
Okay.
I was just that good.
Yeah, you were.
You baked
that
it
bad.
while you baked it.
I didn't know what to do.
As you say, with your words.
Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you both so much. Of course, Jamie co-hosting. It's just so exciting on this culinary journey. Thank you, dear foodie friends, for joining us here in the beautiful Viking and La Cornue showroom in New York City. Stop by and visit, see Jamie, see Chef Jackie, and hopefully you'll be in here for some
Sounds like
special
fun.
things. This will be great. And also, I will have links to Sara Moulton's TV show and podcast, so you can check those out. Visit thevikinglife.com for more inspiration and recipes. Come see me in my kitchen, kitchenchat.info. And always remember to take a moment and savor the day.
Thanks for joining Margaret for Kitchen Chat today. Margaret would be so excited for you to drop by and visit with her at kitchenchat.info, where you'll enjoy podcasts, blogs, recipes, tips from chefs, and even great giveaways. She invites you to share your recipes and kitchen stories too. As Margaret always says, savor the day.